Hey everybody, welcome to Jacob's Quest, and today I just finished watching episode 9 of Andor, and this is of course the second episode of the 3-arc, I guess we'll call it the prison trilogy. You know, of course the every 3 episodes of this show is kind of acting as its own miniature movie, little story arc you could say. And yeah, things are definitely tensing up in this prison that Andor is stuck in, but let's go ahead and rewind a bit. Let's go ahead and start with everything that's going on with Deidre and Cyril Karn and stuff. Okay, so first, Deidre's whole thing. So of course she was on it's Finnick, right? The planet that Andor was growing up on, not as a kid, but when, you know, after he got adopted. Anyways, so she is there. She's torturing Bix, and she's also, you know, after having tortured the owner of the mechanic shop, I think that's what his store is, or was it a bar? I don't remember what his store was. Anyways, so they are basically using the cries of this alien species, the children of this alien species, as a torture device to get her to talk. And of course it eventually does work, and so Deidre's able to collect a bunch of information about like how long Bix, how long Bix has been talking to the buyer, and how the shopkeep had kept this radio signal on top of that tower and in the back of his shop, and just all kinds of stuff. Basically she's still trying to figure out who exactly Axis is. She's still putting everything together, but she does know that, like, okay, the buyer, whoever this mysterious buyer is still, you know, he might have been responsible for Aldhani through a connection of Cassian Andor, right? Because remember, Luthen was like, I wasn't really careful this time. So there, you know, obviously she's going to figure out some kind of solid connection to point right towards Luthen. And if they can point towards Luthen, then they might be able to get to Mon Mothma. You know what I mean? So, very dangerous times for everyone involved. Now, I think, of course, we can maybe assume that Mon Mothma does not get caught in that way, because, you know, she kind of gives like this public proclamation against Palpatine in Rebels, and we see it happen through a recording. So it doesn't feel like she ever gets caught. You know, like she kind of just outs herself whenever she's ready to. So I don't think she's in danger of this connection being made. But Luthen, obviously, something happens to him. So yeah, Luthen's in danger. And we actually don't get any Luthen this episode, which is interesting. Because, I don't know, you'd think he'd be the one who's like, I need to keep covering my tracks. I need to get rid of everyone, right? But anyways, so, what's her name? Deidre. Basically, she makes a report back with the ISB, and they're like, oh yeah, great job. And then later on, she gets stopped by Cyril Karn. And Cyril Karn, this entire episode, you know, we see a couple scenes with him and his mother, and his mom is still just like, oh, why didn't you do this? Why aren't you doing that? You know, and she's like snooping through his stuff, and he is just... he's just done. He's just absolutely like tired of his mom, and she's, you know, and admittedly, his mom, yeah, got him a job and is housing him and feeding him, right? So it's like, hey, maybe appreciate her a little bit more, right? But yes, she is definitely, what's the word? Overbearing, I guess, is the word. So, you know, definitely a strained relationship, and he's just got like this quiet resentment on, and just like his face, he's so tired. So I feel bad, but at the same time you can't feel too bad for the guy, because, you know, he is trying to help the Empire and catch Cassian Andor after all. Anyways, he approaches Deidre later, and he's like, I want what you have. I want to catch Cassian Andor. Thank you for doing everything you're doing. You know, he's kind of getting a little creepy, because Deidre's like, are you stalking me? How long have you been waiting here? You know, and he even like grabs her arm at one point. So it's like, I don't think Cyril Karn's intention was to do any kind of like really creepy, like romantic involvement or anything by like stalking her there. But it definitely kind of came off that way. I wouldn't be too surprised if some people on Twitter start shipping the two, and that becomes like a thing on Twitter. I don't know, but Deidre's not interested at all. She's like, okay, go away, don't bother me ever again. It does feel like Cyril Karn's, you know, like some people thought maybe Cyril Karn's gonna like flip to the good guys and he's gonna be like, you know what, the Empire sucks. I'm actually gonna not help the Empire anymore. But that doesn't seem like where this is going. It seems like he's still fully on the Empire's side. He absolutely wants to help, but Deidre's just not letting him help. But to be fair, he is. He seems like a, I don't know, an Empire fanatic. You know what I mean? Like he's not part of the military or the ISB or anything like that. He's just like a data worker right now, right? But he is like, he's going way over his pay grade and authority to try and do actual missions and track down Cassian Andor. And from Deidre's perspective, it's like, hey, this is my stuff. This is my job. It's what I do. You know, I investigate stuff like this. And you're kind of a nobody, and back off. So I get it. Anyways, we also learn that a rebel pilot has been captured. We don't find out who it is yet. Now look, I know it's tempting to be like, oh, this rebel pilot's gonna be a Biggs Darklighter or something. It's gonna be like some name we recognize. I do not anticipate that's gonna be the case. It's just gonna be a rebel pilot. I think the most important thing was that the rebel pilot, I believe, was from whatever sector of space is the same one that the device that Cassian Andor had. It's the same area of space that he had taken that from. So I don't know if there's gonna be some kind of connection there, or if the rebel pilot knows about Luthen, or I don't know. I'm not sure where that's going. They do mention that he's from one of the separatist cells. So, because remember, even Saw Gerrera was like, oh, these people are separatists, these people are those, like all the rebel cells, all the different groups, while they're all against the Empire, they all have sort of their own ideology going on, or their own like reason, so like there is a cell out there that still believes in the separatist cause, so of course that's its own entire thing, whereas the rebellion that we go to know is to restore the Republic, so they have nothing to do with the separatists. So these rebel cells are not united yet, so this is just a rebel pilot from one of many cells out there, so we'll figure out what all that's about probably next episode. And then let's see, Mon Mothma's thing. So they're still having trouble moving money around, because basically it's like she's got a bunch of money that she withdrew and it's on the books, but then next day it's just gone. And basically the point is that all it would take is one person investigating her to notice, hey, she's moving a whole lot of money around and it's mysteriously disappearing. It's, we're gonna look into that, which of course, it's the Empire, so they're gonna invade all her privacy and then go through her financials and whatever else, right? Like that's just what they're gonna do, and also basically, so the guy that she's recruited, I forget his name, the other Chandrilan guy, her childhood friend, basically says, hey, we need somebody who has a relationship with the banks, someone who can move money and do things under the table, financial wise, and basically we need to hire a thug, this dangerous sounding guy who's like this big criminal, which look, yeah, you're going up against the government, you're gonna team up with criminals, gangsters and stuff like that, right? So interesting that there's gonna be probably some relationship being formed there with the criminal element, but you kind of have to if you're starting a rebellion. You are, according to the Empire, you're a criminal also. So it's like, yeah, you're gonna have to kind of get your hands dirty by working with maybe some less savory types if you want to move all that money around. So that's what's happening there. But we also learned that Mon Mothma's cousin is Vel, right? Her name's Vel. Yeah. So the blonde one who was part of the Aldani heist. So it's interesting that like Mon Mothma asks, like, she mentions Luthen in some way. I forget what she says exactly, but she calls him, right? So she knows that there's a connection between Vel and Luthen. A lot of people had theorized that maybe she was Luthen's daughter or something, but no, that's not the case. She is would her last name be Mothma? I don't know. Or is that Mon Mothma's husband's last name? I don't know now. I'm gonna have to look all this up. I don't remember her husband's last name. Anyways, she is related to Mon Mothma. Now that they also do still mention that she's like a rich girl. So I guess her dad, it would be, let's see, if that's her cousin, then her dad would be Mon Mothma's uncle, I guess, right? How do families work? Anyways, so there's an interesting connection there. I'm sure that's going to become significant because, of course, if they can track Luthen to the events of Aldhani or Vel, now again, that's two ways it all comes back to Mon Mothma. So even though I don't think Mon Mothma gets caught in this way, because she does leave on her own accord when she gives that big speech that we see in Rebels, there are two direct lines that, like, hey, Mon Mothma goes to this store a lot. Hey, Mon Mothma's cousin was part of this heist. Let's look into Mon Mothma. Hey, what's all this money that's mysteriously disappearing? You see what I'm saying? So, like, it feels like it can get real dicey for Mon Mothma real quick now, because there's like two direct lines connecting her to everything. So there's that. Now let's go over to Andor. So this is where like the meat of our episode is really. Andor, of course, is still in this labor camp facility. And basically, you know, they're doing their shifts where it's like, all right, all these teams competing with each other, and then all these floors competing with each other. And we notice that there is a older guy that's there, part of their group, part of their table working crew, and he's not looking so good. He's having trouble, you know, remembering what he's supposed to be doing. He's having trouble like lifting things and just all kinds of stuff. And you know, of course, Andor's trying to help. Everyone's trying to help him, but throughout the entire episode, we keep cutting back to him struggling to do things, and that ends up becoming a big problem later on. But before that, we do see a couple power outages, which at first it's like, okay, weird power outages, and then later another power outage happens, and they all get stuck inside of a walking tube. I don't know, wherever this tube goes, you know, it seems like all these like levels are stacked on top of each other or next to each other or wherever the tubes are going. Anyways, they all get stuck inside, and then rumors start to spread, and everyone's doing like sign language, trying to communicate with each other about like what's happening. People that are in different tubes, but the walls are glass, so they're able to do sign language with each other. And basically what we find out is something mysterious happened on level 2, and that rumor kind of goes around for the entire episode until the very end, when the older guy, he got really sick. They get a med guy down here, right, a doctor, and he inspects the older guy, and he says there's nothing I can do. He suffered from a stroke, and so all I can really do for him is put him out of his misery, because, you know, the Empire is probably just going to put him back to work even if he, like, literally can't walk. You know, that's what they're going to do, probably. So he puts him out of his misery, right? Which, you know, that's crazy. So kind of a mercy right there. And then the doctor says something like he's going to have it better than the rest of us. You know, and everyone's like, what do you mean by that? And Andy Serkis's character, which, yeah, I remember his name was Andy Serkis this time. Andy Serkis's character was like, the entire episode, you know, he's really like, he truly believes that, like, we have a limited number of shifts that we have to complete, and once we're done with that, we get to be free. Our prison sentence is over. And he's believed that the whole time. You know, that's like the hope that he's held on to, that this is actually how it's gonna happen. Now, of course, there was already another character who kind of tried to tell Andor, like, don't even bother looking at the number. We're never getting out of here until they want us to get out of here, right? And of course, Andy Serkis is like, you shut up right now. That's not true. It turns out to be very true. So basically, what the doctor tells them is that someone was freed from level 4, and then the next day they showed up on level 2. So they had completed their shifts, they were freed, and then they just got sent to a different level. And then someone had talked about it, and you know, it started spreading, and everyone was panicking. And so they just killed everyone on the entire level. 100 people. They just killed them all. Which is insane, but it's also like, that is the most terrifying Like, and the thing is, we don't see any of this happen. You know what I mean? Like, we just hear rumors, we hear people kind of panicking, and then the doctor's like whispering and be like, they killed everyone. Like someone showed up, and the rumor started spreading, and you're gonna want to control your men because you don't want to end up like them, right? So it's like suddenly the stakes, as if they weren't high enough by the fact that they're in prison. Now it's like, hey, they can just kill all of us if they decide to. It's not even like a big deal, like they'll just replace us with other prisoners. And also, the hope that we've held on to this whole time is completely false. We're literally never getting out of here. This was a life sentence. That's the thing, is like Andor was sentenced to 6 years, which of course was a bullshit sentencing anyways. But even that 6 years doesn't matter. He's never gonna get out of here. Like, once you're free, they'll just send you to a different level with a different number, and then you'll just move to a different level after that. Like it's crazy. It's crazy. So of course Andy Serkis's character is now like on board, because earlier Andor had tried to convince him, like, hey, come on, you've never thought about escaping? And his Serkis is like, no, I only got however many shifts left. I'm gonna finish my shifts, I'm gonna be free, and that's it. But Andor's like, come on, man, come on, just tell me how many guards are normally here. I need to start making a plan. And so at the end of the episode, Andy Serkis is like, 12. There's normally 12 guards on each level. And of course it's all set up so that next episode, I don't know if they're gonna tell everyone everything, because that might cause like a mass panic, and they'll just kill everyone like they did on level 2. But certainly it will incentivize at least a few more people to be like, okay, yeah, we need to get out of here now, because we are literally stuck here for life. So there's escape at all means possible, right? Get out of here. Now someone else had pointed out that one of the prisoners that does have a speaking role, I don't remember his name, but he is one of the same people that we've seen in Rogue One. I never would have noticed that if Twitter didn't tell me, because it's crazy. Like, I was like, oh, that is the guy. So I don't know if this is going to be a case where a lot of these prisoners end up getting recruited to the rebellion, or if it's like by pure coincidence that same guy years later is working for the same rebellion Cassian Andor is working for. I don't know exactly how that's all gonna shake down, but it is cool that, like, oh yeah, I guess one of the background guys is the same guy, and he has a name, so okay, that's cool. And so it's funny that, like, the show that, I don't know if you want to say infamously, doesn't have a lot of Easter eggs, doesn't have a lot of references to everything going on constantly. It does have a cameo from one of the movies, but it's like a background character that you would only know if you're really familiar with Rogue One, and you're like, wait a minute, I recognize that guy. So that's kind of hilarious that this is the sort of cameo that the show is going to give you. But it makes total sense. So there you go, there's your big cameo. But yeah, so they're all going to escape from this prison next episode. Did I forget anything? A lot of people seem convinced that they're building the Death Star, and I'm not entirely sure if there's any actual, like, evidence to back that up. If there's, like, these things that they're building, are these recognizable pieces that we've seen before in the background of the Death Star or something? I don't know, but everyone seems really convinced that that's the case, and I guess it could be, but again, this doesn't really seem like the kind of show that would do that. This feels more like the show that would, like, no, they're just building something for a facility. It's not, like that's the sort of Easter eggy connection that, like, this show doesn't really do, or at least it doesn't do that forcefully, right? Like, if it makes sense, they'll do it, but, like, they're not going to go out of their way to be like, and they're building the Death Star, and they didn't even know it. It's like, I mean, it's possible, but it doesn't really feel like this show. Anyways, yeah, I'm still enjoying the show. It's definitely, like, it is one of those things where, like, we wait a week, and I kind of anticipate at this point that, like, this is not the third act of this little story arc, so this is not going to be the intense action-packed one. This is still going to be a lot of build up and a lot of talking, a lot of you know. And that's the thing about this show, is that like we get a lot of information, but we're being like, it's all through dialogue, really great written dialogue, but a lot, you know, like we don't see a rebel pilot getting captured. We're just told that there was a rebel pilot getting captured. We don't see level 2, you know, everyone dying in level 2. We're just told about it, you know. So like a lot of it is just like characters talking about things that are happening off screen, which is fine, right? Like it's written really well, but it is like there are still a lot of people who are not on board with this show, and I think that's perfectly understandable, because like you wait a week and a lot of people want to see the action happening, right? So if you don't have the patience for this kind of show, because I do think you need some patience for it, I understand that. I totally like, yeah, I get it, you know. Like it's not the get hype kind of show, at least not until like the third act of each little story arc, right? That's when it has like its get hype moments, you know. But it lets itself build up to those moments. So there's been like this weird attitude going around on Twitter, especially like this one I saw the other day, where it was like, oh, Andor's getting Star Wars right for the first time. It's getting rid of 80% of George Lucas's nonsense, and it's keeping the only 20% of Star Wars that was ever any good. And that's what Andor's doing. And I'm like, hold on, okay, hold on. You know, there's this really weird sort of, I don't know if you want to say elitism, but at least real snobbery going on with people who like really love the show. And again, I like the show too. I'm like fully invested in what's happening, but I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh, this show is so much better than all other Star Wars ever because it doesn't have all the stupid Star Wars stuff in it, you know. Like I'm like, hold on, the silly Star Wars stuff, the cameos, the Easter eggs, the fan service, that's all still good stuff also. This show is just a different show. It doesn't have all that stuff, and that works for the kind of show that they're making here, and I still enjoy that, right? But I'm not gonna sit here and be like, all that other stuff is stupid because this show is the way it should be done. I'm like, hold on, guys, look, it's okay for different types of Star Wars to exist. I can have my Mandalorian where it's got Ahsoka and Boba Fett and Luke Skywalker all showing up, and we all cheer and we're like, yeah, I love that stuff. And I can also like this show where it's like, we're not gonna have any of those cameos, and it's gonna be like a really detailed, really well written character study and build up and slow burn, and like, yeah, I'm totally in with that too. But I'm not gonna sit here and bash that other thing because I like this. It's like, I don't know, it's weird. It's kind of weird the level that people are getting, you know. It's like, you're gonna call 80% of Star Wars trash and say that this is the only one that's doing it right because it doesn't have 80% of George Lucasisms, you know. Like, what are you doing? What's happening? I don't know, guys. It's getting weird, you know. Like Andor is being touted as Star Wars for adults, but the truth is, a lot of Star Wars fans, I would probably say at this point, probably like 70% of Star Wars fans are adults, right? Like there's still a lot of kids out there, but like if you were to take the total amount, all generations of Star Wars fans, it's like the majority of them are probably adults at this point, right? So it's weird to then be like, well, this is the show for adults. It's like, you can say it's a more mature show, but adults enjoy watching Bad Batch and Clone Wars, right? So I don't know. It's getting a little weird with some of the elitism, I think, some of the snobbery that you see online, you know. And it's like, we don't have to do that, you know. Like we don't have to be like, now this is the real Star Wars, it's better than that other trashy Star Wars. It's like, guys, you know, okay, maybe you don't like The Mandalorian, but I don't know, calm down, all right? Like, it's, and the other thing is that, like, I can appreciate everything that this show is doing, and I can appreciate how well written it is and how great it is. And if you want to go out there and say it's the best Star Wars ever written ever, that's okay. That's an opinion on a TV show. You're allowed to say that. but I do think it is worth like acknowledging that, like, hey, this show has the lowest viewership of any of the Star Wars shows. Literally less people are watching it, and I do think it's worth saying, like, hey, it's well written, it's a slow burn, it's a very mature show, but less people are watching it. And I do think it's worth saying, like, okay, well, why is that? You know, like, is it, some people are saying like it's not Star Wars, which I don't think that's fair. Like Star Wars can be many different things. If anything, this show is proof that Star Wars can be many different things. But I do think it's worth noting that it's like, hey, this Star Wars, or this show, is missing a lot of typical traditional Star Wars elements. You know, it doesn't necessarily have the kind of fantastical silliness to it that a lot of other Star Wars does, and some people are praising it for that, and that's great. But I do think it's worth acknowledging that, like, a lot of the fans are not tuning in to the show because it doesn't have that stuff. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's not, you know, that can be a negative, like, numbers wise and business wise, but maybe it's a positive critically, you know. So it's kind of interesting that way. But look, I like the show, but you don't have to be snobby about it. You know, it's this weird attitude going around where I don't know if you're just trying to like really defend the show and try and defend the fact that it has low viewership by saying it's better than everything ever. Okay. I don't know, guys. It's getting interesting out there. I think it is just that, like, a lot of people are tuning into this that don't usually tune into other shows. Because whenever I see those posts on Twitter, a lot of the comments are like, oh god, I gotta watch the Star Wars show, I guess. You know, so I'm like, okay, so you don't usually watch the Star Wars stuff then. And that's fine. Again, like, I've always said, like, even if you only like a couple movies and you don't like everything else, that's fine. You know, you're still a Star Wars fan, maybe just a very specific Star Wars fan, but that's fine, you know. So I don't know. I think there is like a level of, it's like, hey, if you want to love this show and you love it because it's so different than other Star Wars, that's great. But then to kind of turn around and be like, everything else sucks, I don't know. It's like, why are you doing that? You know what I mean? Because it kind of just, you know, like, this show is definitely missing some things, but it's doing it on purpose. You know what I mean? And like, I enjoy it for what it is, but I don't know, guys. I don't know. Look, like I said, I like the show. I'm invested in where it's going. I like the characters, but kind of a weird attitude going around with people online. I don't know. It's getting strange, I guess you could say. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about this episode of Andor. Let me know what you think is going to happen near the big breakouts out of this facility. Do you actually think they're building a Death Star, or is this just not that kind of show where they would be like, it was the Death Star? It's probably just some facility or some kind of, you know, device of some kind. It's probably not the Death Star, I don't think. But hey, if there's evidence out there that it is, maybe I'm wrong. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.